What if, as a federal appeals court recently ruled, what if most of President Trump's tariffs are based on a misreading of the law and are unconstitutional? What if the U.S. Supreme Court upholds that ruling? What if the U.S. Treasury then has to refund more than $200 billion to businesses that paid those tariffs? Here are President Trump's rather dire answers both yesterday and today.
If you took away tariffs, we could end up being a third world country. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly.
Sounds bad. CNN's Vanessa Yurkevich is at the Magic Wall. Vanessa, what kind of a potential mess might we be looking at here?
Yeah, Jake, it's very messy because we've never had tariffs at this scale, and we've never talked about a refund check totaling more than $210 billion. This is the amount that the U.S. government has collected through August 24th from tariffs. And reminder to folks out there, who's paying this? This is U.S. businesses that have paid this much money because of the Trump administration's tariffs. Now, where do we stand exactly? So on Friday, there was an appeals court that ruled that Trump's tariffs were unlawful because he was using the a Powers Act, an Emergency Powers Act, also known as IEEPA, and the judge essentially said that's unlawful. So the Trump administration now is planning to appeal that with the Supreme Court. However, if they're not successful, Jake, the ruling goes into effect on October 14th, which means that the U.S. government is going to have to stop collecting tariffs and pay back all of that money to U.S. businesses. How does that happen? Well, no one really knows, but here are some guesses from experts. The government could either just refund all the tariffs to those U.S. businesses and importers who have paid them. They could argue that they're only going to refund the tariffs to the plaintiffs that were on that ruling on Friday. And that's just a few. That's not a lot of businesses. Or they could require, the federal government could require individual importers or individual businesses to request refunds. Jake, we're talking about thousands of businesses that would have to make those requests. That would surely take a lot of time and could be quite confusing for businesses who are just trying to do the math on how much they have paid so far.
And Vanessa, while this is all going on, we're going to get a lot of information about the job market this week. Today we got the first part of this data. What does it say?
We got the JOLTS report earlier today, and that talks about openings, hirings, and separations, layoffs, or firings. What we saw in this new report this morning was a little bit different than what we've been seeing. We saw now that there are fewer jobs available, so about less than one job per job seeker. You see the numbers right there. Jobs open, 7.18 million. Those looking for a job, those unemployed, 7.2 million. So now the job seeker no longer has the upper hand as they had in the pandemic. And that is really a softening of the labor market, which really supports what we saw in the July jobs report when we saw a really meager 73,000 jobs added in the month of July. President Trump was really upset by that, and he fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics because of that. Where are the jobs openings increasing? Where are they decreasing, Jake? Well, healthcare and social assistance. This is a category that has seen a lot of robust hiring. A reversal here, fewer jobs opening in that category. Fewer jobs down by more than 100,000 in retail and trade. Mining and lodging, also fewer openings. Some increases that we've seen, increases in positions. Construction, we know the president's going to like that. Manufacturing as well, and wholesale trade. Jake, I will just say that this is a snapshot of the labor market. A lot of folks are looking to that major U.S. government jobs report later this week on Friday. That is what the president is also going to be looking at to see if those numbers are to his liking, Jake.
Yeah. Interesting. Vanessa Yurkevich, thanks so much. Let's explore the possibilities with an expert, wealth and investment manager firm president Ross Gerber. Ross, if the courts rule that Trump's tariffs are illegal, the U.S. Supreme Court, how much of a blow could this be to Trump and to the economy?
Well, it's a much bigger blow to Trump than the economy. I think it's actually good for the economy, this idea that it's somehow bad for the economy to take away this huge tax on American consumers is actually false, and the refunds would all go back to U.S. companies that are paying this. So I don't see how that's a negative when the tariffs are the problem. And I think really where the negative is it's a huge blow to Trump's belief system that executive orders are the way to put his policies in place versus doing it the correct way, the way our Constitution states that Congress has the right to make these tariffs and laws. These exceptions that Trump are using are for very limited purposes and for national security issues. And it's just hard to argue that putting tariffs on every country in the world is a national security issue. So I don't know where this goes, but it's more another blow to Trump's style of managing this country. And it's a severe blow because I think he fundamentally doesn't understand the separation of powers of the United States.
Speaking of Trump's style, Vanessa was talking about the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to have the new jobs numbers this Friday, and I was just wondering, how do you think they're going to be received on Wall Street, given the fact that he fired the last BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics director, because he didn't like numbers, and he said some really just demonstrably false things about numbers she'd put out to help Joe Biden or Kamala Harris rather, that she actually had not. Do you think people are going to take the BLS numbers on face value because of all the experts and serious policy people at BLS? Or are people going to wonder, are these shaded just because Trump didn't like the last bad numbers?
I spent a lot of time actually on the Bureau of Labor Statistics websites reading these reports, and there's literally thousands of inputs. These are factual numbers that are gathered throughout our country through an extensive process that is beyond belief, to be honest. It's incredibly detailed. And so the idea that the numbers would be manipulated out of either fear or desire, I think it's possible, but probably not probable. So I'm not going to discount the numbers. I always kind of use my own numbers anyways, and I think smart, financial firms have other methods than just using CPI and BLS numbers to determine inflation and employment. And from my own, numbers, we're seeing a softening in employment, but it's still a pretty strong economy. So we expect more of the same of that. But I think the idea that somebody might lose their job because of a bad number is a very, very poor way to manage the government. Once again, these are not political people. These are statisticians that work for our government, and they don't care who's president. When you work at the State Department or you work in a lot of these places, you work for the U.S. government, and it's not about politics. And I think that's the mistake that Trump's making, is that many of these people could care less who's president. They do their jobs and they try to do them well, and it's for the benefit of our country.
Ross Gerber, thanks so much. Appreciate it.